happened over the course of season 1, and it can get a little confusing. I even get confused. So we decided to make you this video so you can have a quick recap and be ready to start season 2 with all of the information. So let's find out what happened on season 1.
The world of Lorethia is one of daring adventurers, wondrous machines, political intrigue, and deep-rooted magic. The shape of life moves fluidly and not always kindly ebbing where it wills with little care for hierarchy. Our story begins in the country of Grania, a space of new democracy and a hotbed for mistrust. The Mountain Dews, a group of adventurers brought together by necessity, set out to the Plague Marshes on a mission to find the dwarf Gornal, a prominent member of the Thorgol mining clan, recently missing. The Dews were a band of oddities, but what adventurer isn't? The banished Aarakocran assassin Clickwhistle brought a certain disrespectability to the lot. Liam Hammerfist of Harrow was a novice inventor and seeker of knowledge. Nameless and Panther, a druid and her companion who were on the hunt for their mentor, Herrick. Setlali, a Yuan-Ti monk from the Temple of Dol-Ara, who through toil and discipline started a new life in the service to the sun goddess. And lastly, Philip, a paladin of Arwai who had set out to see what good could be done to fix this hurt world. Braving the marshes, the Dews fought off the undead and the unnatural, moving ever inward. At the center of the marshes, they found the Tower of Blight, a prison in which an immensely powerful mage named Kalenth was held. Such was the accounts of the power that the very walls of Sisted were said to be erected by them at the city's founding. Many gifts of the world came from Kalenth, including a magical puzzle box the Dews had recently come into possession of. It seemed as though the Dews had been tricked. The box was Kalenth's tool to escape. Fearing themselves unready, they vowed to return when they felt they had the upper hand. While Sisted wasn't officially home, it housed one of the many doors to the magical mansion Philip and Nameless had been gifted by a dragon, Borgir. The mobile mansion moved effortlessly across the land, its front door a gateway to locations all around Lorethia. Despite the need for secrecy around the house, they were quick to fill it with friendly faces, such as Yvonne, an extremely talented alchemist, 7 kobolds from a trip through the Hills of Madness, and a wide assortment of animals Nameless insisted on bringing. The city held additional friendships in the form of Daphne, head of the garrison and military of Grania, and Nerith, an enchanter who worked with lodestones or concentrated ores of magic. Whilst entering the city, the Dews found it preparing for something called the Luminescent Festival. They were quick to join the festivities, but it seemed even joy had consequences. While Liam and Philip partook in the jousting tournament, Liam found his exuberance for the sport damaged his eye beyond repair. Philip gave him a lodestone, attempting to cheer him up, which sparked an idea in the young inventor. However, it would take time, which luckily they had in good supply. With the festival concluded and their next goal undecided, they strove to further dive into their home's workings. Chief among them, exploring where the other ports on the door led to. One such port led to Ulankar, the capital of Rakia and Philip's fatherland. However, Philip's father, Frankenelli, never told him why he left the capital or his family. And when the Dews finally found them, he came to learn some hard truths. It turns out Philip's father had run away from an Ulankar tradition called the Heist, where a member of a Rakian family enters the gate, is flushed to a random location in the 9 Hells, steals a prize from a devil, and is meant to return. Philip moved to take on the heist, in hopes of redeeming his family name with the Dews in tow. After passing through the gate, it took no time to discover they were in Cania, the frigid 8th circle of hell, where the great wizard Mephistopheles reigned. The Dews quickly rushed to the nearest tower, eager for warmth. Inside, they found an elf named Lirum, delirious and crazed, who worked as if the Dews were no more than ghosts. Eventually, they proved their existence, and despite their attempts to help him, were forced away with many gifts, in an attempt to remain unnoticed from the ever-watchful eyes of this circle's ruler. At the precipice of the gate, they encountered a fearsome sight, a Gelugon, an ice devil. Stealth was the play here, and thanks to Liam's new eye made from the lodestone Philip had given him, they were able to stop the Gelugon in its tracks. With an impressive use of Misty Step, Philip was able to add the Gelugon's spear to their treasure. While the move was risky, this addition plus a few other treasures proved to be enough to free Philip's family from debt.
Once back in Sestet, the Dews were told of a horrifying biological attack against Korhal, a southern city of Grania. The attack stoked the already growing tensions between Grania and the neighboring country of Bovasia. But before they could act on any of it, trouble found Clickwhistle. She had suspected that Barlow Vidigon, dean of the Arcane University, was tied to the disaster in Korhal and attempted to break into his home. Despite her best efforts, she found herself under arrest and, following a trial, was to be imprisoned in Bandarok, with a hefty bail placed upon her. The Dews had no money to pay it, and thus were at an impasse. Unbeknownst to them all, Barlow paid this bail, explaining that the accusations she had flung at him were falsely placed. The machine in question was not capable of what happened in Korhal, but a spell Barlow kept under lock and key might be. In exchange for her freedom, Barlow asked the Mountain Dews to investigate. Having already agreed to do some odd jobs in the town of Felrin, they made for the Blackmire Forest to finish their tasks before heading to Korhal. What they found was quite unexpected. A werewolf enclave was encamped in the forest, led by a woman named Cree. Cree used to work with the mayor of Felrin, a man named Stolta, who dumped Cree from his crew when he found that Felrin would be a perfect chance to stop robbing people at knife point. He had been turning the people against her to cover it up, with the help of a mysterious druid. Agreeing to fake Cree's death and bring Stolta to her for revenge, they set out once more to Felrin. The outskirts were badly damaged, their houses and buildings demolished, and people put out to the street. Hungry, sick, or wounded, they weren't in the best of spirits. During a suspicious audience with the mayor, Liam decided to go unseen through the mayor's abode and poke about. This cunning action revealed a secret tunnel to the basement, a mound of gold at its center, and several carved tunnels stretching about. As Liam explored below, the rest of the Dews wandered the town. While inspecting a collapsed building, the ground gave way and Clickwhistle and Setlali fell to the tunnels beneath. By a stroke of luck, they were reunited with Liam. However, the success was short-lived. Dangerous creatures, Kruthiks, broke from the ground around them, chittering and spattering. Given their burrowing nature, it seemed they had an answer to what was happening to the buildings in town, and dispatched them quickly. Liam stayed below to explore, while the others rejoined for a dinner with Mayor Stolta. Part of the mayor's dinner company included the much-rumored and mysterious druid. It was there that Nameless recognized her as Arwen, the woman who had killed her mother. Unable to hide her anger, Nameless had no option but to confront her. Arwen escaped the conflict and abandoned Stolta, who the Dews turned over to the town to pay for his crimes. On the road home, Nameless found the will to discuss her mother, how she was a bronze wolf, a group of naturalists and druids who wanted to preserve her nature, how she had lost herself before Arwen killed her. However, the biggest telling didn't come from Nameless, but from Panther. In speech, Panther revealed his name was Korvan, and he hadn't always been in the form of a panther. He was Nameless's father, but in the transformation, he had lost memories of who he was and was taken in by his last student, Herrick. The time after Felrin left the Mountain Dew strained, but luckily, a party to officially induct Philip into the Fridaflor clan would surely put them at ease. Before making their way to the party, Nameless and Clickwhistle came under the influence of mind-altering drugs and ported into the Expanse in a desperate attempt to converse with the Raven Queen for advice against Colette. Finding unsuspected success, the Queen revealed one small hint to defeating Colette: strip them of the lodestone, sever the boon. After a rousing party with the Fridaflors, Clickwhistle told the party of an urgent task given to her by her guild, which would divert them south to the city of Taro. With Barlow aiding in their initial jump, the Dews received instant passage to the capital city of Bovasia. It was a land full of technological marvels, with one such marvel being the Warforged proprietor of the Crooked Raven Inn, a voyant chef by the name of Ark. Their lodgings booked, the Dews made their separate tasks for the next morning.
Clickwhistle wasted no time, finding her target's shop, subduing him, and learning the truth behind the prosthetic arm he had created. Its creation ruined his benefactor's bottom line, and they couldn't let it lie. He begrudgingly gave it to her, along with the blueprints, and made his way out of the city. Liam decided to take advantage of the city's heritage, the birthplace of the Artificers. He sought out the Artificers Network, a guild house that represented the best minds producing the greatest in technological advancements, and jumped at the chance to join. Nameless found the Grand Library an appropriate place for research, but found out very little. Having spoken to 2 other dragons before, the ancient worm guarding the steps enticed Nameless. When she then told him of the mansion gifted to her by one of the dragons, crisply told Nameless one thing: don't ever talk about it again, especially dragons. Setlali explored the simpler parts of Taro, seeking out information for her monastery, where she ran into some unpleasantness with people hunting down her kind. Her narrow escape proved to be a fair test of her growing strength, and the dangers still to come. Philip opted to visit the Temple of the Raven Queen, Boveja being her home country. His discussion with the priestess was cut short, as a handful of thugs entered the room looking to cause harm. He put a stop to their routine antics, but this would not be the last he would see of them. Once they all returned to the Crooked Raven, the gangster Mr. Moxie and his thugs paid a visit as a recompense for the events that happened at the temple. With Ark's help, the Dews bested Mr. Moxie, but in turn caused severe damage to the Raven. Having no funds to repair the inn, Ark decided that what was best was for him to become a new traveling companion until they could pay it off. With help from the temple, the Dews escaped Taro by way of the Everheart, an airship captained by the great sky pirate Amelia Fairway. They cut north, met a gnome enchanter who awakened their dormant equipment to new abilities, and after a less than subtle exit from the encampment city of Gleisling, chased across the border into Grania. The moment before their pursuers nabbed them, they fell, lifeless. The familiar voice of Kalenth rang through their heads, warning them not to take another step. Undaunted but disturbed by the message, they found Kor Hall under assault by a herd of elephants. A lone giant owl rider stood in opposition, so what else to do but help? Once they stopped the herd, they found a druid disguised at the helm. He named himself a Bronze Wolf, and claimed responsibility for the mayhem in Kor Hall, deciding that it was what they deserved for having committed crimes against the earth. The Owl Rider rose, thanked the Dews, and took them to meet the head of her unit, Talia, a leading member of the Droplets of Saloon. Talia told the group that the city had been quarantined with a magical barrier, and only those who were infected were still inside. While allowed to investigate, they were warned that should they be infected, they would not be able to return. Undeterred, they entered. Though hordes of infected stood in their way, the Dews reached the central citadel, working their way into the underbelly of the city. They happened upon the device that was spreading this horrible affliction. Not only was it using the city's water supply against it, it was cursing them to exist in this unnatural state forever. Two options lay in front of them: disable the ability to spread the disease, or remove the curse. Only one would be able to be chosen. Would they free the people of Kor Hall from the curse and run the risk of the disease spreading? Or would they stop the disease here and now and doom the people of Kor Hall forever? The choice was an unenviable. Thinking it the lesser of the two evils, they stopped the disease. Talia, moved by their courage, commended them for their efforts, and made a vow to find an end to that curse. Our heroes, victorious but crestfallen, began the long journey home to Stead. Once home, Nameless was desperate for clarity after learning the dark truths of the Bronze Wolves, and on a hunch, stepped through the door of the house that led to the forest. Grand trees, foreign but familiar, surrounded her. She stepped through the thicket. The trill of panpipes called to her, but it wasn't long before the Bronze Wolves found her and gave chase. Fleeing back to the door, Nameless fought off their superior numbers, but was ultimately saved by her friends recognizing where she was. Their rescue successful, Nameless questioned Yvonne as to what the panpipes could have meant. Yvonne merely mused they could have been a representation of the god Corellin, progenitor of the elves. Something more confusing than before. When the danger subsided, Liam reported that the mansion's long sojourn over the mainland had actually landed them close to his hometown of Harrow. He invited Alot to meet his family, and it was a welcome change of pace.
No peace was found, however, as Liam's father, Garen, was found arguing with the city council upon arrival. The heated debate was regarding turning Harrow into a military base for the Knights of the Sapphire Heart, a global peacekeeping organization that had recently come under suspicion. A representative of the Knights was there vying for its installation, while Liam's father led the opposition against it. Liam's father was suspicious of the Knight after the recent allegations, and the Dews agreed to investigate. After a sleuth through his room, it was discovered the Knight was involved with a hobgoblin named Rudnick, the very Rudnick who led the warband that attacked Tomura, where Liam became the boy hero. It seemed Rudnick was eager for revenge, and after the men rushed from his room, they prepared for battle. The following morning saw an intense battle. A few businesses were destroyed, and the main tower was wrenched in half and thrown to the ground. Many people were injured. but with determination, resiliency, and the improbability of Nameless turning into a dragon, the Dews overcame the Goblin Battalion. Harrow was saved. On the hunt for his father, Liam oddly happened upon him on the outskirts of town. After a heated and avoidant argument, Liam traced his father's footsteps back to an old cave. Merely an illusion, the cave held a much bigger and more pressing discovery: a giant lodestone. Liam's father told him how his mother discovered the lodestone, calling it a Mirestone. Back in town, the knight Robin announced that he would be going after Rudnick to end their assault. The Dews volunteered to assist, knowing his motives were in question and needing evidence. Once face to face with Rudnick, Liam challenged him to single combat. Though the boy hero fought valiantly, Rudnick came to best him in their one-on-one. Overtaken with rage, Clickwhistle struck an arrow in Rudnick's clavicle, voiding their honorable combat. As Philip rescued Liam, Clickwhistle struck the killing blow, ending the conflict. They headed back to Harrow and gathered all to discuss their suspicions, and with a well-used zone of truth, they exposed Robin for the lion manipulator he was. Deciding to take some much-needed R&R and to help rebuild the city, the Dews waited before heading on to their next line of business. As the others partook in their various errands, Nameless found herself in a shocking conversation with a masked hunter, which gave her the inspiration and courage she needed to confront the Bronze Wolves. Having their own surprising conversations, Liam and Philip went to the Mirestone under the city of Sested. The stone revealed to Liam a great deal of knowledge on many topics, while to Philip, it revealed Calenth. The conversation civil, Calenth attempted to convince Philip to give them their freedom, speaking of a much greater threat than the Illithid that would rise from the abyss. Philip took this information back to the Dews, with them needing more information before they'd agreed to let them go free. Meanwhile, the Dews were interrupted by a message from Barlow Vidigon. Clickwhistle had been compromised, and in order to keep herself safe, had to go into hiding. The Dews were asked not to look for her. When an angry Setlali demanded to know where she was, Barlow made it clear that anyone having that information would compromise both parties. Hurting but resolved, the Dews moved with Nameless into Angmar Forest. After a long and aimless walk, the eyes of the forest closed in when suddenly they were surrounded by an army of bronze wolves controlling a giant purple worm. Refusing to fight, they gave themselves up for judgment. When oddly enough, the giant worm transformed into the form of an unconscious elven woman, in a process that reminded Nameless of when she had turned into a dragon. The party was led to a village and brought to a great tree at the dead center. There they were introduced to 5 animals: a badger, a hawk, a deer, a sparrow, and a wolf. They introduced themselves as the leaders of the Bronze Wolves. The tension palpable, it seemed that their judgment was not faring well. During a short recess, Nameless managed to sneak away to a nearby cabin where she found Herrick. During an emotion-fueled conversation, she learned a great deal of things, including she was a member of the Sylvain, a special group of druids with phenomenal powers, explaining how she was able to transform into a dragon. The judgment commenced, and it was decided the Dews meant no harm. However, the rest of the council wanted something in exchange for this freedom: Panther's life. Unamenable to these terms, the Dews struck up a deal where if they destroyed a magical weapon in Perona, they would all be able to go free. Until then, Panther stayed as collateral.
The Dews and the mansion sprinted to Perona. On Yvonne's suggestion, they sought out information at a small dockside bar called the Pixie Dust, run by the Heverot twins. Of course, in usual fashion, the twins required a favor in exchange for their information. Their less-than-legal package-delivering operation was being threatened by an ooze in the sewers. Focused and determined, the Dews wasted no time eliminating their target. The Heverot twins were pleased with how quickly their problem was handled, and they offered up all the information they had that could potentially be related to this weapon. The Dews quickly realized that the oozes they had just fought were actually a discharge from the weapon's use. Retracing their steps through the sewers, they found their way into the belly of the weapon itself. Using a route they had discovered previously, they made their way through a long tube which put them out into the middle of a strange metal room. Over time, it became clear that they were inside a piece of ancient technology, much like the mansion they called home. There was, however, one clear difference. The massive size of the machine and the cannon affixed to the top could only mean one thing. This was a weapon of war. With no time to fully understand what it was capable of, they agreed that its destruction was paramount. They decided it was best to get it out into the open while they looked for a way to destroy it. Placing a hand on the control panel, Liam put his intuition to the test as the machine started lurching its way down the long tunnel in front of them. The Dews careened through the tunnels, searching for any exit. Ever the clever one, Liam figured out how to activate the machine's burrowing abilities. The threader chewed through the earth, and it wasn't long before they made their way to the surface. Following the traces of magic throughout the machine, Philip was able to find its input, However, he needed Nameless's assistance in order to fully understand how it worked. While out of her element in the metal contraption, she was able to vibe with the magic coursing through it, realizing that it functioned much like a living thing. With airships from Perona closing in, Liam put together a haphazard plan. Nameless transformed her and Philip into birds so they could safely escape, while Liam took the lodestone that had served as his eye for months and thrust it into the machine's input. As he told the contraption that it needed to die, the gauges started to whir rapidly, and it began to shake violently. Setlali and Liam managed to jump off of the tank and into a pocket dimension prepared by Liam, just in time for the tank to explode. After a harrowing journey back to the mansion, the dudes got a night of rest before Nameless led them back into the Yangmar. The adventurers stood once again in front of the Bronze Wolf Council, but instead of handing Panther over and sending them on their way, they made an offer. Trade Panther for Herrick. Knowing that Panther wouldn't be allowed to live unless she took him, Nameless felt she had no choice but to leave Herrick behind. Matters were only made worse when alongside the council appeared Arwen, causing a stir in the party. Setlali moved to strike the druid, only to be instantly grabbed by the guardian tree and beaten nearly to death. Philip was able to convince them to spare her, and they allowed the party to leave with their lives. However, needing to say one more goodbye, Nameless appeared at Herrick's door once again. With one quick incantation, she commanded her former master to forget she ever existed. The dear councilwoman, Laree, then led them out of the village, and offered to make Herrick's memory loss permanent, to which Nameless agreed. Before saying their goodbyes, Laree told Nameless that she was her grandmother, and asked her to be the kindness. Swearing that she would kill Arwen, Nameless led the dudes back home. There, they found a nervous Yvonne, who took them to the courtyard, and turned their gaze towards the skies. In the distance, a fleet of airships were headed across the maledicted wastes. Ignited by the destruction of Perona's weapon, war between Alolia and Jortenia had begun. And that's been our first year. Thank you for joining us on this roller coaster of laughter, joy, and sorrow. We are so happy to present our story to you, and we hope that you'll join us for the next part of this journey, and for all the journeys to come. Welcome to the Natural Ones.